Breaking Barriers, the Legacy of Wilma Rudolph. When I think of women's track and field, I see admirable women doing incredible things. But I also think about a time when women couldn't compete in sports and were marginalized for doing so. I can't imagine a world without women's track and field, and the diverse athletes that we see today. But none of this would have been possible without athletes fighting for a change. Who was Wilma Rudolph? Wilma Rudolph was a pioneer in the sport of track and field, but also for sport and society as a whole. She was a symbol of female strength, a warrior for racial equality, and a defender of the weak. Wilma was a barrier breaker. Wilma was born prematurely as the 20th of 22 children. Her parents were both workers and did their best to support their large family. Wilma was a sickly child and had to wear a leg brace until the age of 11. Doctors told her she would never walk again, but she defied those odds. She grew up in the segregated South and attended an all-black high school. During high school in Clarksville, Tennessee, Wilma played basketball and ran track. She was spotted early on by the coach at Tennessee State University, Ed Temple. While still a high schooler, Wilma qualified for the 1956 Melbourne Olympics, where she was a part of the bronze medal 4x100-meter relay team. After having her daughter in her senior year of high school, Wilma went on to run for Ed Temple at Tennessee State University. Wilma was a standout athlete at Tennessee State. In 1960, she qualified to represent the United States at the Rome Olympics. She won gold medals in all 3 of her events, becoming the first American woman to win 3 gold medals at one Games. After these Games, Wilma dominated the running scene until she retired at the age of 22, to focus on her family and life outside of sport. After her time as an athlete, Wilma became active with the youth through teaching and coaching. She also became bolder in her activism and used her platform to speak out against race and gender inequalities in America. She gave speeches and goodwill tours, met with JFK, and lived a life that exemplified the America she wished to live in. Wilma died in 1994 after battling brain cancer. She left behind her 4 children, but she also left behind a lasting legacy. While Wilma's life was stunning in all regards, the historical context surrounding her life and accomplishments make her all the more admirable. Born in 1940, Wilma lived through turbulent decades in American history. Wars and political tension. Wilma was born during World War II and lived through the aftermath. Many African Americans fought in World War II, and the fight against the Nazi persecution of Jews served as a symbol for the fight against racism. Likewise, women joined the workforce and played a vital role in America's fight during World War II. Wilma also competed during the Cold War, seeing the political and economic tensions that this caused. The Civil Rights Movement. The height of the Civil Rights Movement was the 1940s to the 1960s, encompassing Wilma's entire early life and athletic accomplishments. She graduated high school only a few years after Brown versus the Board of Education ruled to desegregate schools, yet her school remained segregated. She witnessed America's reaction to many important acts during the fight against segregation, but she also got to take inspiration from these acts. From Rosa Parks and the bus boycott, to Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, to the Civil Rights Acts, Voting Rights Acts, and Fair Housing Acts. Likewise, other African American athletes of the time were using their voices to speak out against racial injustice. The Women's Rights Movement. The Women's Rights Movement occurred from the mid-1800s to the 1900s with the actions of prominent women such as Elizabeth Cady Stanton. However, women were still treated as second-class citizens. Women were kept out of major sporting events and the Olympics until the 1928 Olympics in Amsterdam. The Olympics had been around for 50 years before women were allowed to compete, and even then, they were kept to only a few events for many years. The progress for women's rights ebbed and flowed over the years, but prominent women and female athletes played a significant role in shaping the society we know today. Wilma's impact. In his book Fair and Foul, Eitzen discusses sports as a microcosm of society, but he also emphasizes that sport isn't just a passive representation of society. Instead, it can also be an agent of change. Through her life and accomplishments, Wilma demonstrates just that. Fighting for racial equality. Sports and the Olympics have been significant stages for change in the fight against racial injustice. Wilma's athletic success took place during times of intense racial conflict in America, and despite the legal actions against segregation, it took years for true change to take place. As the first American woman to win 3 gold medals, Wilma rose above racial stereotypes and expectations. Wilma's athletic accomplishments put her in a light of admiration for many and allowed her to touch the hearts of Americans, both blacks and whites. Her success created a shared admiration and pride, challenging racial lines and showing that the color of one's skin does not determine their worth, ability, or potential. Wilma also used her platform to protest segregation and promote civil rights. After her dominating performance in the 1960 Games, she refused to attend the homecoming parade organized in her honor if it was going to be segregated. Because she used her voice and stood up for what she believed in, the parade was desegregated and she was welcomed home by people of all races. She took part in sit-in protests, spoke in public, and even met President John F. Kennedy. A champion for women's sports. Wilma not only faced limitations because of the color of her skin, but also because she was a woman. Women were limited in their careers and treated as second-class citizens. Women's sports have come a long way since the early 1900s due to the bravery of our early female athletes. Wilma defied the common arguments against women in sports. It was thought that physical activity could cause infertility and health issues for women, but Wilma proved that the opposite was true. Wilma competed very successfully both before and after she had her daughter. This was incredibly significant for female athletes. It is common for female athletes to wait until they are done competing before having children, but Wilma's example has helped to change that. Athletes like Allison Felix and Faith Kipyegon have had children and continue to compete at the highest level. Female athletes are now being protected by clauses in their contracts, allowing them to have families without being penalized. This wouldn't have been possible without the early mothers of women's sport. Another argument against female athletes is that sport could cause women to become masculine. Culture defines masculinity as tough, competitive, and powerful, all of which are intrinsic characteristics of sport. Early cultural beliefs were concerned with women losing their femininity in sports. Wilma was often called dainty and graceful, which helped her integrate into sport. Her outward appearance made her athletic participation more socially acceptable. Her performance helped to prove that women could be exceptional athletes and people, inspiring future generations of female athletes. More than an athlete. Wilma's story started at the bottom rung of society, yet she reached the peak of athletic success. Wilma grew up in a poor family, but her parents worked tirelessly to give their children the best life possible. Wilma and her parents' relentless effort took her from a poor kid in the segregated South to an Olympic champion. But Wilma did not forget her roots. Along with racial and gender activism, Wilma cared deeply about poor youths and communities. She started the Wilma Rudolph Foundation to support poor communities in athletics and academics. She was passionate about helping people and left a legacy everywhere she went. The weight of activism. Wilma played a vital role in shaping sport and society for racial minorities, women, and poor youths, and while most of her impacts are positive, some of her interactions with society may be viewed in a less positive light. As mentioned earlier, Wilma fit the societal expectations for what a woman should look like, which helped her fit into sport. But this also reinforced the ideals from the time of what a woman should look like. Wilma was also less outspoken than some other athletes of the time, such as Jackie Robinson and Muhammad Ali, so it could be argued that she should have been more outspoken. However, Robinson and Ali were African American males, while Wilma was an African American woman, so she had to fight two sides of discrimination. Lastly, Wilma was used by the American government to promote nationalism during the Cold War, but their use of propaganda didn't acknowledge the racial and gender issues in society at the time. Any negative impact that Wilma may have had was likely a passive impact and not an intentional act of provocation. Wilma carried herself in a way that exemplified the society she wished to live in. She didn't stir the pot. Not one individual person is responsible for the changes that we have seen in society, but each person who chose to use their platform to stand against injustice and divide have contributed to the lasting changes in American society. Wilma's life is not just impressive because of her athletic accomplishments, but because of the trials she overcame, the lives she touched, and the lasting impact she made. Wilma was a barrier breaker for racial and gender equality. Her legacy has changed society and sport for future generations, and her influence continues to impact our society. Here are the references I used to gather information about Wilma's life, the social context surrounding her life, and her impact made on society and sport. Thank you.